subtitle of this book is Disruption is Coming to Commercial Real Estate Brokerage. Are you ready? And I want to take a moment and just think about what is disruption. When people say disruption, what do they mean? And I just wanted to try to help you think about that for a second. It's not interruption. You might remember long ago when we used to drive cars, you might be on the turnpike or the interstate and there would be an accident and you would be interrupted. You would be stopped. You couldn't move for an hour while the accident was cleared. It's not simply advancement or the evolution of ideas. Like if you're as old as me, you remember tube TVs, and then those became flat screen TVs, and it really changed everything in terms of the way viewing worked. For today, you might say that it isn't self-driving cars. We've been driving cars, and now they have advanced to the point where they can take over some of the tasks, like parking the car as an example. So disruption is not interruption. It's not evolution or advancement. I like to think of it as a whole new way. Some people use the phrase creative destruction. And the idea is that many times the new way completely replaces, in effect, destroys the old way. So you are already familiar with this. Again, back when we used to go places, we took Uber. And so all of a sudden there's a huge fleet. Can you believe it? We're getting in strangers' cars and letting them drive us places. You could clearly make the case that you don't have to own a car anymore. And 20 years ago, that was unthinkable. I just want you to be thinking about, as we talk about these ideas today, that disruption really means a whole new way. And so what does that mean in the context of our rodeo, our corral? So I began to try to think about disruption in our industry. And the reason that I put this slide in front of you is because I wanted to be really clear about the ideas that I thought about for this book. The book is divided into three parts. The first part is about our clients. Will disruption be caused unto us because our clients morph? Our clients do things in a whole new way. They have new capabilities. They think in a new way. They have new demands. They want different scope from us. The second piece, the playground of the giants, is that we have some very, very large players in our industry. Some that you could name very quickly, and some maybe you haven't thought about quite as much. And so disruption can be caused by the big boys. If we have an elephant in the room, or if Amazon sneezes, we all catch a cold. So disruption logically could come from these big players. The third piece, the demographic evolution piece, is just simply code for, are we the agents of our own creative destruction? Is our workforce changing in such a way that the players who are inside the arena are actually the elements, the tools of disruption? And so I try to give some thought to that. What I explained in the introduction to the book is that I did not think about other factors that can cause disruption, such as technology or economic challenges like a recession or a pandemic. It's not that those things don't cause disruption. They do. It's just that they cause disruption across the board. In other words, the pandemic, which I was not clairvoyant and didn't time it that way. It's been pretty humorous, really, that you would publish a book called Disruption on Pandemic Day. But the challenge with those items, technology, economic movement, recession, et cetera, or pandemic, is that they affect all of us. They're not unique to commercial real estate. So what I wanted to do was really narrow the focus to commercial real estate brokerage. If you read Thrive, you know that I'm a sort of a process-oriented guy. And so each of the 9 forces that I examine is in a chapter. Each chapter has the same skeletal structure. I start out with a story trying to illustrate what this chapter is going to be about. Then I describe the force itself with enough information. Some of it you'll know, some of it you'll say, okay, I hadn't quite realized the scope of it. And then the meat of the chapter really is the implications. So what if this became true? Or what if this moved? Or it's already moving, what if it speeds up? At what point might it become the dominant force? And then finally, because I did not want to leave you simply with, hey, here's an idea, check it out, I wrote the 4th section, which is called Are You Ready? And in that section, every chapter is the same. And I simply say, if you feel that this is a particularly applicable force in your world, here are some action steps that you can take. Here's how you can begin to investigate it further. Here's how you can prepare yourself. Here's some things you can do, possibly to move in front and benefit from the disruptive force. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to walk you quickly through 4 of the 9 forces. And I'm going to just try to give you a sense of some of the ideas that I've been thinking about and sharing, and you've begun to engage in those. So chapter 1 is called Transparency Jolts Our World. And the subtitle of chapter 1 is, Will Commercial Real Estate Agents Experience the Same Disruption that Happened to Travel Agents? Well, what happened to travel agents? Well, in 1990, there were 132,000 travel agents, and the last year that I could get a formal, validated count was 2014. So this is old data. Most people feel that the number is less now if you just sort of read the press. And so there's 74,000 travel agents today. So that by itself is a 44% decline over a 24-year period. Let's say maybe with 6 more years in the history books now, that it's about a 50% decline. So the simple question is will we lose half our agents over, let's say, a 20 or 30-year period? Well, what happened? What caused that? Well, what caused that was the customers of the travel agents gained a view into and manipulation of information that they previously couldn't touch. So if you're old enough, you remember that the way we used to get a ticket on an airplane is you would call a travel agent on a phone, a rotary phone that had a cord, and you would call that agent and you would say, this is what I would think I would like to do. And then they would say, great, let me investigate. They might call you back and say, here's your options. And you'd say, I would like that option. And they would say, great. And 2 days later, a courier would bring over your ticket. And that's the way we did it. Can you believe that? Well, as the customers began to be able to see into that information, think what happens, which is that you want to control your own information. You want to compare all the airlines. You can game the system with different tickets at different times, different pricing structures. And if you had to deal with a travel agent today, you'd say, what a hassle. I don't need another person in my way. Many of us travel quite a bit. And in the old days, people would frequently count on someone else, an assistant, to make their travel arrangements. And in today's world, it's just so much easier and simpler for me to do it because I can see it, I can do it quickly, and I've got saved credit cards and click, 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 and I'm good to go. In 3 or 4 minutes, I'm good to go. I can do it on the app. So what happened to those travel agents? What happened to that body of travel agents? Is this at all indicative of what could happen to us? Well, some simply left. They left the industry, as the numbers show, which is that it was too hard. It was too thin. There was no easy money. It wasn't as simple as simply taking an order and having the courier run over and do it. Some remain. If you were to investigate the industry today, you would find that there are very high-end travel agents in the world today, and many people rely on them. But when I say high-end, what I mean is that for the most part, they've been to the places that you want to go. In fact, there are travel agents now that will accompany you. You and your family can hire a travel agent not only to make the recommendations, but then to essentially, it's almost like in golf, they have what's called a four caddy, someone who moves out in front of your shot, shows you where your ball landed, tells you about the green, and then runs up to the green to make sure that they can find your ball when you hit it. Many transformed. Some of those that are doing something different did something different. Travel agents bought resorts, they bought islands, they bought airlines, they bought trains, they bought fast-moving trains, and they bought historical trains. They morphed into the timeshare world, where they now effectively sell whole chains of resorts. So in other words, they don't help you with everything, but they can help you with a certain classification of accommodation around the world. It's been a remarkable change. Well, you can look to other industries. It's not that only travel agents have experienced incredible transparency, but think about these. Think about hospitality in terms of the way that you interact with a hotel before. I tell the story in the book of calling the travel agent, and she gives me the 800 numbers of the hotels. And so I call those hotels and say, hey, I think I'm coming in your direction. What have you got? How does it work? And they would say, well, let me mail you a brochure. Can you imagine that? Waiting for snail mail to bring you a brochure? I live in Orlando. The University of Central Florida is here. It has a world-class hospitality school, which makes sense, right? All the hotels are here. And so you think about, well, why would I need a degree in hospitality? And the reason you need a degree in hospitality is because you learn to manage change. You learn to live in a very dynamic world. And if you didn't think they had disruption before, think about what's happening to them now, where the occupancy across the land is under 10%. But think about legal services. We could be compared to legal services in a way which we have experience, we've had cases, we have templates, we know the law, and we know the brokerage, they know the law. Well, if you think about the fact that now you can get almost anything you want done on YouTube. You can, in many cases, have $15 a month deducted from your paycheck and prepay for legal services. But in the last year that it was measured, there were $5 billion spent on online legal fees. So that means that the client is going in, ordering exactly what they want, and paying possibly to even a bidding situation of who wants to handle this for me. So if you are a 60-year, I'm 63 years old. If I were an attorney, I would be thinking to myself, man, I hope I can just make it a couple more years, because this is so different than it was when I started. Think about stock trading. It used to be that you called your broker, they would execute your trade, then you would find out about what happened when you got your monthly statement in the mail. Well, now you can trade stock at lunch. There's probably somebody trading stock right now. You can't help yourself because you're getting an announcement on your phone that something happened, and you're like, this is the time to buy, and you're executing that trade right now, and you might be executing that trade for free. It used to be $7, and now it's free. So you can see that the coming transparency really enables our clients to act differently. Will that change our scope? So will there be fewer agents overall? Will we simply reduce in our number? Maybe technology or transparency, will not come evenly across the land, so that in some communities we still need these agents and others we don't. Will we go the way of the stock trader? Will we go down to $7 where we provide a scope of services for a fixed fee? Because when the prospect or the client calls us now, they go, oh yeah, I already subscribe to RealNext. I already have that information. I'm just asking you to come with me on the tour and opine on the buildings that I've already picked out. Or I've already scoured the information that's available on the internet. I've seen Google Earth, I've seen Street View, I've ordered 15 reports about the building. I know where the nearest hazardous waste is, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I just need you to do this one thing for me. Could it be a radical change to our typical scope of services in which customer begins to say, just like you would with a travel agent, you might now call the travel agent and say, I have a very unusual request or very specific request. Would you come with us? Would you make a connection for us that we don't already have? And so what if they called you and said, I need you to introduce me, the scope I want to pay you for is to introduce me to the best architect for the case, for the structure that I have. Wow. You used to do that for free and get paid on the transaction. So transparency is a disruptive force for us. So I think in terms of how do you prepare for this, one of the things that I recommend in the book is that you give serious thought to your value proposition. When you introduce yourself to a prospect, are you making it clear how you can help them? Your value proposition is right out front. And I urge you to think about that. By the way, your value proposition could change every 6 months over the next few years. You don't want to be unknown or unintended or not really clear. You want to be out in front. Even if it is changing, then change with it. But here's a gauge for you. Here's how you can just simply decide, look over at the windsock and see how fast what the wind speed looks like, and just take a little self-poll of your maybe 25 best clients and just say, okay, well, here's a list of my 25 best clients, and on your own scale, on a scale of 1 to 5, how tech savvy are they? And this group's a 1. These guys are 5. Yeah, these guys are 5. Yeah, they got some young guys. They're 5. They're 4. Yeah, this woman lives and breathes tech, so she's a 5. And then just check that list a year from now. And if you discover that there's been a big move, that your group of clients has become more tech savvy, then you can be assured that transparency is a big part of that. Okay, well, with that, I'm going to change my pace a little bit here. I want to talk about what's known today as the gig economy. And the gig economy is also part of the first section where I'm talking about the way that the clients evolve. But it is so multifaceted, and maybe you've thought about this, maybe you haven't. In this particular case, we're not talking about transparency. We're talking about the way that the internet in particular is used. Most players today would agree that for the most part, and certainly historically, the internet has been essentially seller controlled. All of you have bought something on the internet over the last week. Maybe you went to Amazon, or maybe you wanted to buy new running shoes, and so you searched on the shoe and you found that you could buy it at Dick's, or you could buy it at Amazon, or you could buy it at Target, whatever it might be, and you were looking at the offerings of the sellers and you picked what worked best for you and you made your play. Well, that whole shift is underway where the internet becomes buyer controlled. It's already in motion. I mentioned in the book a guy named Doc Searls. You might treat yourself to the book he's written on this topic. He's perhaps the foremost expert. But let me just pick one little slice of that and give you a sense of what I mean by that. I wish I could see you all and just say, so how many of you are familiar with Upwork? I've been familiar with it for a couple of years. If any of you have a copy of Adapt in your hands, look down at it and realize that there were 3 different Upwork vendors that were involved in the production of that book, because I was able to go to Upwork and find very specialized vendors, contributors in very specific ways to what I wanted to accomplish with the book. Today, this is what the Upwork resume looks like. There are 5 million registered users. That would be guys like us who post the jobs. There are 12 million freelancers that have survived the scrutiny of Upwork and offer their services, which could be us, right? Some of you listening are Upwork freelancers. There are about 3 million jobs a year fulfilled on Upwork. So think about that, 3 million jobs, 3 million tasks fulfilled annually, which have a value of about $1 billion annually. So that's what that's what those 5 million people are asking those 12 million people to help them with tasks. And when those tasks get assigned and get paid for, it's about $1 billion a year. $1 billion a year. So here's a little chart that appears in the book. I wonder if I could get some commercial real estate tasks done by somebody on Upwork. So what I did is look in the first column, and it says phrase I use to search for freelancers. So I said, well, what if I wanted to have someone abstract my lease? And what Upwork enables you to do is type in keywords and then see if there are any vendors that also have those keywords in their profile. So you can see that 15 people offered that service. And when I scrolled through that, I discovered that the range of pricing for that was somewhere between $15 and $150 per hour. And so you could get it done as cheaply as $15 an hour or as much as $150 an hour. And then the final column is number of similar tasks that were requested. So in the past week, on the day I created that chart, 50 people had logged in and asked for the abstracting of a lease. Look at GIS mapping. What was really particularly scary about that is the quality of the vendors. You would see people, we're all involved in making our maps, or maybe there's a marketing specialist in our office and we turn to that person. We say, hey, I'd like to do something like this, or I want to take our typical template and kind of do it like this, or, here's something else I saw and could you make it look sort of like this? And some of us are CCIMs and have access to Site to Do Business and other portals that do these things for us. But you look through the quality of these people, and these are big-time professional geographers. These are ArcGIS specialists, certified type folks. Look at negotiate a commercial real estate lease. Can you imagine that you could hire somebody on Upwork to negotiate a lease for you? Yeah, look at that. Prepare an offering memorandum. How about retail market analysis? Where should I put my store? Or what are the chances that my store would succeed in this area? So here's the point, gang, which is that the buyers, in effect, are starting to control this because they're posting the tasks, and the bidders, the vendors, us, are starting to think about responding to this. So that makes it pretty darn interesting in terms of, wow, a whole new way to think about a scope of real estate services. So what are the impacts on us? Well, imagine that you wanted to take advantage of this. It was just a simple play for you. You just wanted to take advantage of this. Is it possible that it could create maybe turbulence in your relationship with your platform? In other words, you say, well, Blaine, there are 11 agents in my office and we all have to work through the same marketing specialist. And I kind of get it in a way because, that person can balance about 20 projects a week and you sort of get in line. But you could say, I could buy it myself from somebody who has lots of experience. I can see their profile. There's a star rating. I can see what other people have said about them. I have found the Upwork people to be Upwork vendors to be extremely responsive. And so you could start to say, I think I'd like to change my split with the company and I'll just pay for that service myself because I can get exactly what I want when I want it. Wow. Maybe I could even get a lawyer who has now said that they will abstract the lease or they will opine on the document, and they're willing to do it at $100 an hour because they're doing it on a fee basis, doing it at night, whatever it might be. It really starts to get interesting if you were particularly good at some sort of task in your world. You could say, yeah, I'm an agent for ABC Realty in Orlando, and I make commissions all year long, but I also have a second arena for my services, which is I'm a vendor on Upwork and I make $50,000 a year making maps for people. Well, one of the things the obvious questions that you have to ask here is, well, I wonder if you should consider outsourcing a job. If you read Thrive, you know that I'm a big Gantt chart disciple. And what most people say to me is, Blaine, I see it. I get it. I looked at a Gantt chart. I know how it works. But when I Google Gantt charts, commercial real estate, tenant representation, Gantt charts, I don't get anything, man. I can't even copy the darn thing. And my reaction to that is, well, for one client, to prove my point, I typed in Gantt chart. I explained exactly what I wanted. I said I had a list of what I believed were the 40 steps that you would have to go through to enable the tenant to move from one location to another. I had 24 bids in 24 hours, and they range from about $20 to $50. And so the customer chose one of those things, got it back in a day, made edits to it, and now they make a Gantt chart for every representation assignment. So, what would it be like to compete with me if every time I pursued a tenant rep prospect, I showed up with a Gantt chart and said, well, Mr. Jones, here's what we're working on. Here's today, and our goal is to get you in, as you can see right here, on October 3rd. And here are the things we're going to go through. And this is how I will be reporting to you. Maybe you should be a freelancer. I'm not sure that you shouldn't post a skill that you have. And frankly, even if you're not ready to post a real estate skill, you can translate Russian, you can sketch caricatures, you can opine on the best way to use a CRM. There are a lot of things that Upwork would be happy to have you be a part of. So that's chapter 3, still in part 1, which is what happens when our clients change. What I'd like to do now is move into a topic that is in the second part, which is what happens when the giants move around, when there's bouncing around by the big boys in the arena. Where does that leave us? So in particular, I want to focus on Amazon, and I'll tell you why at the end. But here's the subtitle for this chapter, which is the elephant in the room is already stomping around in our world. And you're like, maybe, Blaine, I don't know. Yeah, there's a 1 million square foot warehouse I read about, or the NAIOP chapter had a tour of one recently. Yeah, sort of, maybe. Okay, what do you mean? Well, here's what I mean. That if you look in their latest 10K, their annual report that they submit to the SEC, you'll see that they lease about 270 million square feet around the world, and they own another 11 million square feet. And of that 281 million square feet, 200 million square feet is in the United States. So if you poke around and say, who is the largest tenant on the planet, or who is the largest user of CRE on the planet, you'll get little estimates here and there. Some people say, oh, the GSA, or they come up with different users in different places, but it's really hard to find anyone who has aggregated space like Amazon has. So would it be fair to say that we would have to keep our eye on Amazon because we're players in the commercial real estate arena and they're the single largest user of space in our arena? Wouldn't we have to watch them? Well, I want to help you to think back about the HQ2 event and what really happened there. So as you remember, they said, we need a second campus. We've exhausted Seattle. We take up all the space. We've sucked down all the talent. We need another location. And maybe we want to be sensitive to, if there's going to be an earthquake or we have a storm or we lose power, whatever it might be, we feel like we need some redundancy here. So they put this thing out, and as you recall, your city bid. 238 cities bid. There's some fantastic stories about what the bidding cities did to draw attention to themselves. That part of it was really humorous. Of course, in the end, what happened was that they selected Arlington as the key city where they were going to place their 50,000 employees. And if you just stop and think about that for a moment, just in your space, in your world, what would that translate to? So if you're an office-related player in the arena, what would 50,000, how many square feet would that be? And you can use various densities, and of course people are talking about densities changing, but what would that look like in terms of housing? What would that look like in terms of retail? What would that look like in terms of hotel rooms? If an employer showed up and put 50,000 people. Now, just to give you a sense of what that means, I live here in Orlando, about 8 miles from Disney World, and it is known to be the largest single site employer in the country, which is code for 65,000 people a day show up to work at Disney World. And they were trying to place a facility where 50,000 people a day would show up for work. So that'll give you some sense of the scale of it, almost Disney World. And of course, then when they decided not to go to New York, or they were disinvited from New York, then they decided, okay, well, we'll do some spinoff work in Nashville. So what I want you to think about, though, and I don't know whether you have ever taken a look, but you can find it on the internet, and you can find the bid that was made by your city. I've looked at the Orlando one, and I was kind of dumbstruck, because there were not only the standard sort of demographic, here's how many people we have, and here's the sort of fundamental list of assets that the community has, but all kinds of things were revealed about what the community might do. Like, we might give you our football stadium. We might give you the land for the second phase of the convention center. We might widen this road. We might put bridges over this road. All these things that were said to entice them. So if you were Jeff Bezos, you would say, I bet it'd be worth it to have a team that does nothing but read every single word and start to catalog this stuff. And then as we go out into the market, imagine Amazon saying, so we would like to put a 1 million square foot warehouse here. And so somebody goes, okay, well, the land is $10 a square foot, and the rent will end up being $9 a square foot in the building. And they go, It's so funny, because I know you're willing to give us that land, first of all. And second of all, there's 3 other cities within 200 miles of here who will give us the building rent free. And just and just think about the benefit of being sales tax. So what happens when the largest user of commercial real estate is also the smartest user? Nobody has all of the information that they have. So let's think about some sort of ponderables here in terms of who Amazon is. For one thing, they have about $50 billion in cash. They're led by Jeff Bezos, who is the richest man in the country, even after his divorce. He is the 28th largest landowner. He owns 4 or 5 tracts of land that would be big enough to put a city on, including, in my case, about 50 miles from here. He owns a tremendous amount of land around the spaceport, if you will. What if he decided to effectively convert his real estate to a REIT in some way? What if he simply said, wow, we could acquire all the real estate that we occupy, or cause it to be acquired by a company that we control? In other words, hey, Mr. Landlord, I got good news for you. We're going to take 200,000 square feet from your property. I want you to be sure and take note of paragraph 12, which gives us the right to buy the building at any time. We have a continuous first right to match, whatever it might be. So that becomes pretty interesting when you start to think about, wow, instead of buying Amazon stock, which is maybe subject to the vagaries of the marketplace, this would be more like a McDonald's play, right? We were all taught that, McDonald's is a real estate company that sells hamburgers off their land. What if that's how we played, or Amazon chose to play? What if Amazon chose to take control of all of their real estate and say, well, we actually want to property manage or facility manage our real estate. So we will take the space, but we're going to control who the property manager is. Maybe you've heard of our company. We have a services company. It's called CBRE. Yeah, we just closed on them a year ago. What would that look like? Then the final thought there is just that I wanted to give you to think about, which is, if you have not read this book about Bezos called The Everything Store, you should treat yourself to that. And when I read that book, I learned that the very first website that Amazon had was www.relentless.com, which was the mantra for Bezos's growth strategy. So today, if you type in www.relentless.com, it automatically shifts to Amazon. So now the largest user and the smartest user could possibly be the most potent user of commercial real estate on the planet. So something to think about. This chapter got written, it instantaneously inked in my brain when I went to a large tech conference and someone from Prologis stood up and said, listen, I'm the market thinker guy for Prologis, and we are the largest industrial REIT on the planet, and our largest tenant is Amazon. And what we've learned is this: every person, every tenant, every landlord, every vendor, every landowner, every capital source in commercial real estate must have an Amazon strategy. So could we extend that and say, if you're listening, that we would have to have an Amazon strategy? And it's like, yeah, I'm going to have to go back and think about that. I do. I can't sell my book without an Amazon strategy, and I have to think about, am I going to let them fulfill it? If you try to buy the book right now, Amazon informed me, shockingly, that the book is not essential. And so even if you try to buy the book on Amazon Prime, they say, great, we'll sell it on Prime. We won't charge you for delivery. We're just going to deliver it a month from now because it's not an essential product. Like, well, if I was living off book sales, that would be an interesting thing to know, wouldn't it? They also said, by the way, if you sell out all your books, we won't be restocking for a month. So every single person that can hear my voice has to start to think about, what is my Amazon strategy? Okay, finally, I'm coming near the end here, gang. Thanks for hanging in there with me. I am in my fourth and final chapter that I'm going to sort of preview for you. This is in the third section of the book, in which I ask, are we the elements, are we the tools of our own creative destruction? So chapter 8 is called Old Age, and I explore the idea of what happens when the average age of a commercial real estate broker in the United States is 60 years old. That's the truth, by the way. There's been several surveys that have documented that, and just try to think what it looks like when you have a demographic that averages 60 years old. The country's average age, by the way, is in the 31, 32 range. What about the new folks? How are the new folks going to come into this world? And so the question that I ask is, would a rising star, this person who could come into our industry and be a star, what are they thinking about? Would they follow the same path that I followed, because I got a degree in school and came right in the real estate brokerage business? I thought that's what I was supposed to do, and I've been in it ever since. But if I rolled back the clock and watched this movie again, is that what I would do? So when the new agent looks around and goes, well, how do I think about this? Well, the first thing I might say is, well, man, a lot of these guys are old. I don't like to think of myself as old, but I'm ready to face that fact. And then they look around and go, there's not that much diversity. If you were to watch all of the seminars and conferences around the world about commercial real estate, you would say about 50% of them now are all about, how do we increase diversity? How do we draw new people in? And so what's happening is the HR folks and the folks that are in charge of global learning are becoming much more powerful in the big organizations now, because they're desperately trying to figure out, how do we bring these people in? We know that we have a relatively poor onboarding program. Maybe the best we do is offer draw, which is just prepaid commission. In other words, we're going to give it to you, but then we're going to take it back. Many new brokers are treated simply to a business plan, which is, well, listen, I'm just kind of ADD, and I just, everything's interesting, and I just work hard. So if you want to make it in this business, just, chase around with me. Finally, what you'll discover is that I estimate in the book that there are maybe 100 programs around the country that teach real estate in some way. I'm a graduate of the University of Florida, but UCF, FSU, FAU, all these other organizations have real estate programs. And what you'll discover is very, very few of those graduates are going into brokerage. So we have more formal real estate education than we've ever had in the history of mankind, and yet they are not producing brokers. But here's what the agent does know, is that they have been trained in the same business school to think about these companies. If you look at the first four, Apple, Google, Facebook, and Amazon, a professor at the university at NYU, Stern Business School, wrote a book called The Four. His name is Scott Galloway. I strongly encourage you to read that book, primarily because he comes to the conclusion that Amazon will be the grand prize winner out of the four. Those four, the top four there, if their revenues were combined, they'd be the seventh largest economy in the world. So you could think about sort of what that means, and there's their strategy. But look at the tech companies that are in our world. Look at Redfin and Zillow, and look at the revenue and look at the valuation. So in Zillow, a company that grosses $1.1 billion is worth $8.6 billion. Wait, what? $1.1 billion of revenue is worth $8.6 billion in terms of market valuation. And so you can look at real estate tech companies and see that they're trading 6, 7, 8 times gross revenue. Well, yeah, but we have CBRE. They have $21 billion in gross revenue. Yeah, and that's what they're worth. So if you're a young broker coming into the marketplace, you might be thinking to yourself, if I was the greatest broker of all times, and I became a partner, because that's what I would think I would be doing, is trying to move up to partner and have control of my firm, and I work 20 years and I build the revenue of my firm, and then I can sell it at 1 times gross. Or I could start working in my garage, see if I could figure out how to help these folks, create an app and sell it, even if I've never made profit before. If I've never actually caused revenue to become a profit, I can still sell it on a multiple of the top line, not a multiple of the bottom line. So here's something that the new agent might dream about. So Colliers in particular has been a leader in trying to draw people to this accelerator called PropTech. And so they use the Techstar platform, and they typically have somewhere around 800 to 1,000 entities apply to be put into this rocket launcher. They have an idea, they explain their idea, and then if they are chosen, then they are wedded to both mentoring and money, and with the idea of trying to create the app in effect. Now, these are only commercial real estate apps we're talking about. So we're talking about people that are being funneled into a system where they will not earn brokerage fees, but they will cause either OpTech, how to operate the property more effectively or efficiently, and the operating companies, and then PropTech, which makes the real estate perform in some way more powerfully. Look at this quote: "Together, we will uncover and shape enterprising solutions for the commercial real estate industry." By the way, what they if you go to the tech conferences, JLL, CBRE, they'll all get up and talk about their tech dreams, and the fundamental message they'll give you is, look, we would much rather buy it. We have the money. We could do it ourselves, but we would much rather explain our problems to smart people, let them figure it out, and then we'll buy it from them. Here's the question at hand then. So are we the agents of our own demise? Because we have not really created a strong pathway for them to come in, and simultaneously they've been attracted to other ways to play in this arena. Well, in effect, by letting our average age become 60 and never paving the way for new people to come in, will they simply choose not to come in, or will they come in a totally different way? Maybe there won't be as many commercial real estate brokers as there were in the past, not so much because of the transparency like a travel agent, because we all age out and nobody takes our place. What about this giant gap in the demographics where I'm 63 and I'm thinking, yeah, I don't really want to go to that many meetings. And frankly, I want the best possible split, because I already know how to do this. I don't need a sales manager. I just want to do my thing. And frankly, I'm more interested in buying property than I am selling it for other people, which is not where the entering class, that's not where their heads are. So we have this gap here that we have not really bridged very well. And then finally, if you had your choice, if you had options, would you commit yourself to brokerage, or would you go in a new direction? So the things that we have to be thinking about, no matter who you are, whether if you're as old as me and you're thinking, is it worth it to change the entry process? Is that what we need to do? Will we give our companies over to the HR and learning leaders and say, please help us change the entry process so people will come in? Or maybe we say, you know what, this ship left the dock, and the transformation, the disruption is already underway, and the smart money would be to sponsor young people in the process of creating CRE tech. So pretty disruptive to maybe think about sort of where we'll be.